Hi everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how large language model communicate with API. This video is part of the video series that I'm going to be making on hacking large language models, because before you can start hacking large language model, it's worth understanding how large language model communicate with API, and that is the essence of this video. The next video is going to be we're going to dive into hacking large language model properly. But before that, let's dive into understanding how large language model communicate with API. And I'm going to be using PortSwigger Academy as our learning path because they have really done awesome job in creating the learning path and showing how large language models communicate. And I have also created a diagram illustration of what they did for better understanding. So let's get started. There is a workflow for large language models to communicate with API, and it depends on the API structure, how it takes, how the API communicates, and the likes. But before the large language model can communicate and have a valid structure of what the external API is required, the large language model may need to communicate with private API inside for it to generate a valid request. Okay, so that's we are going to illustrate. Now, looking at the diagram by my right here, as I've transformed this text, the whole text here, I've transformed it into this diagram, and that is how it works. So let's look at the first one. Let's start from the pre-first. Let's say, let me say, the user send this prompt into a client, a browser, an application, or whatsoever, and say, can you confirm the following URL is malicious or not? Give example.com. Let's say, for instance, probably you want to do a threat, the user wants to do a threat intelligence into a virus total. This can be a virus total. Let's just add, let me add this as a, let's say, this is virustotal.com, virustotal.com. Okay, so this is it, and that's an API from VirusTotal. Now the user send this prompt to the client. From PortSwigger, the client calls the LLM, the large language model, with user prompt. So this text from the user goes to the large language model, and this is still appearing here. And the large language model process it and converts it and determine that there is need before it can call this external API. There is need for calling an internal function or API, whatever you want to call it, or tool, to convert this user prompt into what can be understood by this VirusTotal API. Okay, and this is it will generate from the second side here, from the second step here. There are two sub steps that forms a single step. The first one is that it determines if there is a need for a function to be called internal tool. Yes, if there is an internal tool to be called, it converts that user prompt into a JSON format, right? This is a prompt, and send it to the function. Okay, I send it to the client. The client again now call the tool, and that is 3B and 3A. Okay, the calling and the response, I've broken them down into 2A and B. The calling, the client call the function of the tool with this prompt that we have here, and the function now remove every other unnecessary user prompt, whatever it is, and focus on what the API can understand. And that is why we have this here, because the way this works, I'm using threat intelligence, doing a threat intelligence as an example here. Okay, so this tool extract every other unnecessary user prompt from the user prompt and focus on what the API can understand and send it back to the client. And the client again now call the large language model with this full response, send it to the large language model before the large language model now send to the virus tutor API, and the virus tutor API respond back to the large language model, while the large language model now summarize the response of the API and send it back to the user, to what the user can understand, where the client actually send it back and summarize it back to the user. And that is just the summary of how large language model communicate with external API. Don't forget that where we are going is how to hack a large language model. And I would like you to join me in my next video to understand how hacking large language model can be. But to let you know, the attacker can make use of this opportunity, because if you want to do a threat modeling on this, there are a lot of things that you can look into, especially communicating from the large language model to the API. So that is why there are security implications that as a large language model calls the external API on behalf of the user may not be aware that this API are being called, but an attacker can get hold of this large language model and get so many things from this from the API. The attacker can get the API key, can get so many information from the API. I'd like you to join me in my next video where we are going to be diving into how to hack large language model. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next video.